He was the hardest worker in every room he entered, and that was exactly why he was losing. For 6 years, he showed up before anyone else and left after everyone else. He wore his exhaustion like a badge. He measured his worth in hours spent, not results earned. The day his income changed was not the day he worked harder. It was the day he finally stopped. You have been taught a lie, not maliciously, not by people who wanted you to fail, by people who were themselves taught the same lie. That effort is currency, that the more you sacrifice, the more you deserve, that grinding without direction is the same thing as progress. It is not. Look at your week, not the version you describe to people, the actual version. You are busy, but you are not building. You are moving, but not in a direction you chose. You check your phone 40, 50, 60 times a day, not because something important happened, but because the silence of your own thoughts makes you uncomfortable. You call it staying informed. It is not. It is avoidance wearing productivity's clothes. You have a list of things you are going to start. Next month, after this project, when things slow down, when you have more money, when the timing is right. The timing is never right. You know that. You have always known that. In 2026, the average person has more access to information, tools, mentorship, and leverage than any generation in history, and they are using that access to watch other people build the life they say they want. They are consuming strategy without executing. They are learning without applying. They are inspired for 45 minutes and then back to exactly who they were before the video ended. You have done this. So have I. The question is whether you are still doing it right now. Working hard is not your problem. Working hard without a system is. There is a version of you that puts in the same number of hours and produces 10 times the result, not because you found some secret, but because you finally stopped confusing motion with direction. Here is what no one tells you about comfort. It does not feel comfortable in the end. Right now, choosing not to change feels like rest. It feels like wisdom even. You tell yourself you are being patient, measured. You tell yourself you are not rushing, which is not the same as standing still, except that in this economy, in this era, it is. Because the ground beneath your feet is not stationary, it is moving. And if you are not moving faster than it, you are falling behind while feeling completely still. Do the math without the math. If you earn what you earn today, and you do not shift your strategy, your income in 3 years will be approximately what it is now. Maybe slightly more from a raise that does not keep pace with the cost of everything around you. Your rent is not staying the same. Your groceries are not staying the same. The gap between what you earn and what you need is not closing. It is widening, slowly, like a fault line. You will feel it suddenly one day when what you have built is not enough for what life now costs. Meanwhile, someone with your exact skill set, your exact starting point, same city, same background, same obstacles, made a different decision. Not a harder decision, a smarter one. They stopped optimizing for effort and started optimizing for leverage. They identified the one thing they could do that would multiply every other thing. And they did that one thing relentlessly while you were busy doing everything adequately. You do not have a work ethic problem. You have a strategy problem disguised as a work ethic problem. You are not behind because you are lazy. You are behind because you are loyal to a system that was never designed to make you wealthy. Go deeper, not into your calendar, not into your habits, into the story underneath all of it. Because here is the truth most people will not sit with. The real reason you have not shifted is not that you do not know what to do. It is that changing your strategy requires you to admit that the old strategy was not working, and admitting that feels like betraying 6 years of yourself. You built an identity around being the one who works hard. It is how people know you. It is how you know you. If you stop grinding the way you have always ground, who are you? If you stop measuring your value in hours and start measuring it in outcomes, What happens to the version of you that felt most worthy at 11 p.m., exhausted, telling yourself that the sacrifice meant something? This is ego. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that looks like dedication from the outside but is actually fear of a different failure, the failure of a new strategy that you cannot blame on not working hard enough. If you try something smarter and it does not work, you cannot hide behind effort. The excuse disappears, and you will have to look at something harder. The possibility that the problem is not your hours, but your thinking. Some of you are doing research right now as a form of avoidance. You are learning, endlessly learning, because learning feels like progress and never requires you to be accountable to a result. You have consumed more information about success than most people alive, and you have built exactly nothing with it. That is not a knowledge problem. That is a fear problem wearing a curiosity disguise. The first shift, from effort to leverage. Imagine two versions of the same person. One spends 8 hours executing tasks, good tasks, necessary tasks, done carefully and completely. The other spends 2 of those 8 hours identifying which single task, if done at the highest level, makes the other 7 irrelevant. Then they do that task with everything they have. The first person is tired, the second person is compounding. Leverage is not a shortcut. Leverage is the intelligence of understanding that not all effort is equal and refusing to pretend otherwise. In the AI era, leverage is not a luxury, it is survival. The tools available to you right now can multiply your output by a factor your former self would not believe, but only if you have already identified the direction you are multiplying in. A hammer does not build anything alone, neither does a tool without a strategy. Stop asking how you can work more. Start asking, what is the one thing I could do this week that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? The second shift, from identity to outcome. You are not a hard worker. You are a person who has been producing results. Those results have been modest because the strategy has been unfocused. That is a fact, not a condemnation. But as long as you are protecting the identity of hard worker over the outcome of actual progress, you will never make the changes required to close the gap. Release the story, not permanently, just long enough to evaluate it. Ask yourself, if someone looked at my results from the last 2 years, not my effort, not my intentions, just the results, what would they say my strategy has been? And is that the strategy of someone who is building, or someone who is surviving while telling themselves they are building? You do not need to work less. You need to work on fewer, better things, and you need to have the courage to decide which ones those are. The third shift, from waiting to experimenting. In 2026, the person winning is not the person with the best plan. It is the person who moves fastest through iterations of imperfect plans. The world is shifting too quickly for perfect execution of a 2-year roadmap. You need a direction and a bias toward action, then the willingness to adjust based on what actually happens. You are waiting for certainty. Certainty is not coming. The only people who had certainty were people in industries that no longer exist. Run the experiment. Start the project at 50%. Ready. Launch the offer. Post the content. Pitch the client. Not because you are reckless, because the feedback you get from doing is worth more than the clarity you will never get from waiting. Picture 2 people right now tonight. Not future people. Present people. Same age, same city. The first is reading about a strategy they want to implement. They have been reading about it for 4 months. They have 3 notebooks full of ideas. They are almost ready. They need just a little more clarity, a little more information, 1 more course, 1 more conversation. The second implemented a version of the same strategy 3 months ago. Imperfect, incomplete. They made mistakes in the first 6 weeks that the first person will never make, because they will read about them in a forum and feel grateful they avoided them. But the second person is also 3 months into learning what actually works in their specific situation. They have clients or revenue or content or skills that are real rather than theoretical. By the time the first person is ready, the second person will be in a completely different category. This is the AI era gap. It is not a gap in intelligence, it is a gap in who moved and who thought about moving. And every week that gap widens, not because the world is cruel, but because the world is moving at a pace that rewards action and archives hesitation. There is no version of 2026 where waiting becomes an advantage. None. The window is not closing gently. It is closing at a pace that will surprise you if you are not watching it. There is a moment that does not announce itself. It does not arrive with music or clarity or some external signal that now is the time. It arrives quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day, when you are tired of the person you have been performing as. Not tired of the work, tired of the performance, tired of telling yourself a story about who you are and where you are going while your actions tell a different story every single day. That moment is available to you right now, not next month, not when things align, right now. Because the shift from working hard to working smart is not a strategy update. It is an identity update. It is the moment you decide that results matter more than your comfort with your current methods. That the person you are becoming is more important than the person you have convinced yourself you already are. That you are not here to prove you can endure. You are here to build something real. You already know what needs to change. You have known for months. You have been circling it, studying it, justifying why now is not quite the right time. Now is the time. It has always been the time. The question was never whether you could, it was always whether you would decide to. Most people are waiting for permission to become who they already know they need to be. Here is your next 24 hours. Not a life plan, not a vision board, not a promise to yourself that this time will be different. One decision, one concrete, specific decision that changes the direction of your next week. Identify the one task you have been avoiding that would actually move the needle. Not the task that feels productive, not the task that keeps you busy and comfortable, but the one you have been quietly dreading because you know it matters and you are not sure you can do it at the level it deserves. That task. Today. Not perfectly, not completely, if it is too large for 24 hours. But started, touched, made real rather than theoretical. Because that is the gap between the person you are and the person you have described wanting to be. Not a different strategy, not a different set of tools, not a different environment. One decision made today to move on the thing that matters instead of moving on the things that are comfortable. The strategy shift does not happen in a seminar. It does not happen when you finally have the right information. It happens in a quiet moment when you choose results over comfort and you execute on that choice before the feeling passes. Do not let the feeling pass. This is the work, not the hours, the decision quality, not the volume, the direction, not the grind, the intelligence of what you are grinding toward. You came here today because something in you knows there is a different version of this story available. A version where the effort you already have gets pointed somewhere. It can actually compound. That version is not far from where you are. It is not reserved for people with better starting points or fewer obstacles or more time. It is available to the person who decides. Be that person, starting now, starting tonight. Subscribe to Supreme Hustle. Tomorrow's episode is for the ones who are still watching right now, and you already know why that matters.